Recording going. All right.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome as you pour into the Emerald Ash Borer Awareness Week webinar series put on by the Don't Move Firewood campaign. This is a yearly webinar series that we try to do during EAB Awareness Week to shed light on this pest and others that use the firewood pathway of spread. So this year we have, did that change over for you?
No,
How about now? Second slide?
same screen.
How about now?
There you go.
Okay. This year we have three webinars. If you missed the webinar yesterday by Carrie Pike from the USDA Forest Service, it was excellent. The recording will be available soon, so we will have that up on our website on the EAB Week 2026 page, which you can access on the news tab on our main site. We'll try to get that up in the next day or two. Today we have our very own Alex Meacham giving a talk on his work. It's titled Ash Kicking Outreach in Oregon and Washington, and I will chime in on that one a little bit as well. And then tomorrow we're going to hear from Philip Patyandi from the Davie Resource Group with his talk, EAB from Crisis to Opportunity, Managing and Growing a Resilient Urban Forest in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So if you have yet to register for that one and you want to, again, same news tab, same EAB Week 2026 from our website to do so. And before I hand it over to Alex, I just want to go over some quick housekeeping stuff. Is the right page showing now?
Yep, you're
I'm
good.
getting different pages for some reason. So these webinars will be recorded, as I mentioned. Those will be on our YouTube channel and on the EAB Week 2026 page. There will be plenty of time to interact and ask questions, especially during this webinar today at the end. So if you have a question and you want to be sure, you don't forget it or we don't lose track of it, put it in the Q&A feature, which you might have to look for the More button on the Zoom tab there to find. You're certainly welcome to use the chat. Sometimes chats can be active in webinars, and so we might just lose track of it. Also, feel free to say hi in the chat and let us know where you're coming from. That's always really interesting to see, where the audience is coming from. If you want to say your affiliation as well or who you work for, it'll give us a good sense of our audience and what we can talk about at the end. So I think that is all I have. I'm going to hand it over to Alex if you want to introduce yourself and pull up your slides, and we can go
Yeah,
from there.
let me get those pulled up here. All right. Is that looking right, Laurel?
It is. Yes, looks great.
Great. All right. Well, welcome. My name is Alex Meacham. I'm the Firewood Outreach Coordinator for Oregon and Washington with the Nature Conservancy's Don't Move Firewood campaign. We're going to be talking a little bit today about my project to um, let people know in Oregon and Washington about Don't Move Firewood, help them to get some of the messaging in place as forest pests and pathogens really start to arrive in the Pacific Northwest. And it's really great to see some folks from Washington and some folks from, oh, Bangor, Maine. That's exciting. Uh, and yeah, we're gonna have a great conversation today, and there'll be a great opportunity for you to provide some input on my project as well. But I'll let Laurel introduce what Don't Move Firewood is.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Yeah, so I just wanted to give a really brief overview of the Don't Move Firewood campaign as a whole, as it is a national level campaign. And there might be some folks here who aren't as familiar with us. So I'm sorry if I'm kind of belaboring the point with those who are already very familiar with this. But I'll try to make it quick. So why don't move firewood? Unfortunately, firewood is a really common vector for the spread of invasive insects and diseases that can harm our trees. We see forest pests moving on firewood every year, and we see new infestations every year. There are regulations out there that specifically target firewood to prevent this from happening, but for the most part, there are a lot of regulations focused on the pests themselves, and then firewood falls under that as a regulated article. Those regulations are by no means consistent or comprehensive across the United States or in Canada. And so a big part of our job is really just trying to get a handle on what's going on, where, when, because these insects, they don't care about boundaries. They're constantly popping up in new places, and people are often trying to play catch up with regulations or even taking regulations down. And so understanding that environment, both from a biological standpoint, but also a regulatory standpoint, is really important. And it's really important so that these regulations are effective. And for them to be effective, people have to know about them. And so we convey this information not only to the firewood using public, but also help fellow educators and stakeholders and agency folks and really everybody who's already in this realm have a good understanding of what's happening and where. Oh, sorry, next slide. But taking a step back here for a second, looking big picture, why is the Nature Conservancy doing this? So the Nature Conservancy's biggest goal here is to protect trees. And then with this campaign, the tactic is to slow the spread of invasive forest pests via the firewood pathway specifically. And as I mentioned, in this effort, we're not only targeting firewood users who might use firewood for recreational purposes or home heating, but also fellow stakeholder group educators. So really anyone in the forest health field in the broader sense, or anyone who's willing and able to help get the message out about this topic. So of course, oh no, go
Oh,
go
sorry.
back. It's okay. Don't Move Firewood is a message in and of itself, but we always couple that with another action-based message, something that can provide a little self-efficacy is always really helpful in conservation efforts so that people don't feel this doom and gloom all the time and they feel like something that they can do as an easy option can help. And that has been shown to kind of generate towards behavior change. So we always couple Don't Move Firewood with one or three messages. So buy it where you burn it, gather on site, or buy certified heat treated firewood. Now, if we're talking broadly or to really general audiences, sometimes we'll just include all three of those responsible alternatives to moving firewood. However, if we're working with a specific partner in a specific area, we might omit one or more of those other action-based alternative messages. So, for instance, if it's a national park that doesn't let you gather on site, or there's plenty of places in the country where certified heat treated firewood is unheard of and not available. So obviously that would not be productive to include that. So it really gets specific and context based. And so when we're working with our partners, it's really important for us to get a sense of what the story's like on the ground, what the culture is like, and what sort of messages are going to be most effective in those areas. Now you can move. Um, Something that's really helpful, again, for both the public and our partners is our website. We have a lot of really great outreach tools. A lot of our work can kind of showcase in our resource library. So there you can find social media type graphics that you can just pull right out and use for your own efforts if you want. It gives a lot of examples of the customized work that we've done for our partners at no cost. So like, South Dakota might want a new poster. They reach out to us. We work with our contractors and them to get the right imagery that they want, the right messaging, and we put their logos on. And then we put the final product in our resource library and send the digital file to them for no cost. So that's one of our services. And that those examples can be found in the resource library. And there's a lot of other things in there. There's outreach toolkits, kids activities, bulk outreach material, all sorts of good stuff. We also have a really important tool that is very much targeted to the firewood using public, and that's our firewood map. So this is an interactive map. It has every US state as well as every Canadian province. And folks can go here, click on their state or their province, and get a really good sense quickly what the rules, regulations, insects of concern, what the situation is in their area or the area that they're planning to visit. So that is something that again, is we really have to keep up with as things change. Certainly, anytime we get word of a change regulatory or otherwise. We update that, but I also look at it on an annual sense to just try to make sure that links aren't dying and everything else. So certainly, if you see something in your state that's wrong, that's something that we always ask that you reach out to us about. We have a lot of information on the forest pests and pathogens themselves. That's under the invasive species tab. We have a news tab there that used to be more of a blog and now kind of mostly shows like events like today's webinar. And then we also have a monthly newsletter that I encourage you to sign up for if you just want to stay in the loop with all things forest pests and firewood. 10 of our most common and popular websites have been translated to Spanish for those who could find that useful. And then finally, if you're looking for something a little more inclusive, or more targeted to the partners and the professionals in this field, that is our firewood comparison report. And that's basically the firewood map on steroids. So it's not layperson language. It is very comprehensive. It includes information and links when possible to every single regulation in the country, the US, that has to do with firewood at all. It also has information on heat treatment certification programs, both federal, under the spongy moth, they're still a big one, are also state-based. So whether or not states have the programs to certify the heat treatment of firewood. And that's important, obviously, for the commercial firewood industry. It also, importantly, for the outreach side of things, which is where we're focused, has information on the visibility and accessibility of firewood outreach on very important websites, important in the sense that firewood users are likely to access them. So what happens is a lot of times Department of Agriculture or similar will have some firewood messaging because maybe they have a regulation. However, the state parks website won't, or the campground reservations won't. And it's much more likely that those are the locations that firewood users are actually going to and where they need to stumble across that information because they're not going to be seeking it. So we look at that sort of thing, and then we really just show whether or not those states have information on firewood in important places, and if so, how likely is it to kind of jump out at users? And that helps both our partners kind of get a sense of where there's room for improvement. It also gives us a sense of priorities in terms of reaching out to our partners and trying to improve that outreach. I believe that's my last slide.
Yeah.
So again, I just wanted to give a very broad overview. I hope that gives anyone who's not familiar with DMF as a national campaign a good context for Alex's talk. And like I said, there's going to be plenty of time to answer questions at the end. So if you have questions kind of based on the DMF campaign as a whole, I will be here to answer those. So that's all I got. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. As Laurel mentioned, the Don't Move Firewood campaign is a national scale campaign, and there are so many tools and resources available on our website. I highly recommend you go and check that out. Uh, Resources like those exist because forest pests and pathogens have been highly active and threatening in other parts of the country for a long, long time, and we've been relatively lucky, I think, here in the Pacific Northwest to have avoided them. But unfortunately, that time is coming to an end. So my role with the Don't Move Firewood campaign is to give a little jump start to the Don't Move Firewood messaging in the Pacific Northwest. In 2022, emerald ash borer was first detected in northern Oregon near Portland and the Washington state border. And since then, Washington and Oregon have both been developing rules and quarantines to limit the spread of emerald ash borer and other forest pests. Not saying that EAB is the only one that folks are worrying about, because there are many. Um, Especially under threat is a species of ash called Oregon ash, which largely grows in stands along rivers and streams, which is crucial habitat for keystone species like salmon. And so the threat of these pests is very real for a number of ecosystems and species. Um, my role is to help folks start to understand the role that the threat that contaminated firewood can pose, and to make sure that going into the future, folks like Laurel are in touch with agencies and nonprofits and businesses that use or provide space for folks using firewood into the future. Um, like Laurel mentioned, every state has different rules, and Oregon and Washington are no different. I won't get into the details of the rules here, but if you would like to read the details, I suggest you visit our website and check out the Oregon and Washington pages of the firewood map. Suffice to say that both states are have or are establishing firewood quarantines and developing labeling practices. So my job is to communicate those to firewood users in both states to make sure that folks know what's going on and can be a participant in Don't Move Firewood. But before I can just get started on emailing everybody in the Pacific Northwest and tell them not to bring firewood anywhere, it's actually kind of helpful for me to learn what the actual situation is on the ground in Oregon and Washington. And of course, surprising nobody, it's complicated. Oregon in particular has been at this for a while and has a pretty well-established pest reporting process, response setup, and plans for the eventual arrival of EAB and other pests and pathogens. Washington also has a robust pest response system and has already displayed some incredibly effective uh, pest responses recently. And both state agriculture agencies have been picking up Don't Move Firewood messaging more and more and more in recent years. Uh, like Laurel said, generally Don't Move Firewood messages like buy it where you burn it are present on uh, agriculture agency websites, sometimes nonprofits. But unfortunately, the major camping websites in Oregon and Washington, whether they are state parks or federal campsites or private campsite owners, typically either have one-off information for particular campsites or just no information about Don't Move Firewood at all. So that's the big goal of the project. I want to encourage every agency and destination marketing organization and campsite owner or camping and firewood business to include some Don't Move Firewood information. So how am I doing that? With a communication and outreach plan. Uh, when I started, I developed a kind of four-phase approach to help everyone from agencies to private businesses to better understand some of the threats coming into our region and the long-term hazards that they pose to everyone, and help them to help their customers and audiences to protect our forests. This typically starts with a classic cold email or a phone call or a form submission, followed by what I like to call persistent, polite pestering. Uh, and once my pestering has paid off with a response, I set up a meeting where I provide specific advice about their website or registration system. In that meeting, I provide our customized per state Don't Move Firewood messaging toolkit, which we'll get into on the next slide a little bit. And that is really the connecting point for the future of Don't Move Firewood in these states. We're laying down some groundwork to get these messages into the hand of as many Pacific Northwesterners as possible, and we're relying on staff from dozens, if not hundreds, of organizations to help us to spread the word. Uh, on this slide, you can see the first paragraph of my little cold email, and kind of how this moves from a cold email to a long-term engagement process. The toolkit that we typically end these meetings with provide straight text resources with simple, easy to use languages. They provide links to more information, images, graphics that Laurel mentioned earlier that people can adapt for social media or for, engaging with kids even. And there's two main goals for these toolkits. First of all, that staff at organizations with campsite users find them useful and take language directly from them to place onto their website. We want to make it as easy as possible for folks to update their messages so that people see information about Don't Move Firewood before they leave with firewood. And that's really the key, is that we want to make sure that people see this information before they leave rather than after they're already there. Secondly, the point of these is so that as they're developing new places on their website, new campsites, that they have this messaging available and on hand to include on those places. So with all of that, your natural next question might be about how it's been going. And I'm pleased to say it's been going really well. So far, we've collected about 400 different organizations and agencies and businesses and tribal governments and educational institutions and professional organizations. We're really running the gamut between Oregon and Washington, and we've ranked them on a priority outreach scale. About 120 of those 400 are our priorities and are ones we consider to be extremely important to our outreach effort. Those include land managers like the Oregon and Washington State Parks agencies, private organizations that do a lot of campground management like Hip Camp, and other nonprofit organizations and gatherings like the Oregon Country Fair. Of those priority outreach targets, about 30% have already responded affirmatively and held meetings to improve their websites, several of which immediately implemented changes on pages of particular concern, where, they would even recommend to bring firewood with you because it's not available on site. So we've been getting some really good changes already. Uh, we're also tracking times that we've managed to persuade folks to add some information and what that information is and where people can find it. So we'll be generating some really fascinating data once this short-term push through September is over. Speaking of a short-term push through September, because of some budgetary limitations, my position has some time constraints. So the last part of our outreach process is making sure that we have some continuity and that these organizations are connected with Don't Move Firewood into the future. Our hope is that we have given organizations and agencies the tools that they need to continue on their own, but we also want to make sure that going into the future, they're connected with folks like Laurel at Don't Move Firewood so that if they have questions, we can get them answered. We'll also be doing a large-scale report out in October at the Society of American Foresters National Convention in Tacoma. If you're interested, I'll be there, and it'll be some really cool data for all of you data wonks out there like me. You can see my a little screenshot of my spreadsheet here. You can tell I really like building spreadsheets. So since I started about 2.5 months ago, we've already started seeing some results. One campsite manager near Portland updating all of their listings on recreation.gov with Don't Move Firewood information. And in that particular case, it was the persistent polite pestering that resulted in some really great and highly critical changes for places near an infestation. We've also been working with DMOs across both states, destination marketing organizations, and several have already updated individual listings and started to train their staff on Don't Move Firewood practices around firewood. We've also been working with other organizations that work beyond just tourism and camping and beyond just Oregon and Washington. Uh, though this particular change started in the case of Oregon, it has national implications. Uh, and by creating a resource sheet that match their stylings, we're hoping to better reach their audiences to let folks who use firewood for heat know how to better protect themselves in their forests from pests. Uh, like Laurel mentioned, we are happy to engage with organizations however best suits them, whether that's creating graphics free of charge or just making time for them to learn. However, not every meeting has resulted in changes, I like to say, yet. Follow-up conversations are a really critical part of this work, and with specific and incremental change on a huge number of websites, we hope to preserve Oregon and Washington's forests towards the future. So I'm really hoping that I can actually get your help with this as well. Uh, I'm wondering, first of all, if you have any questions about the Oregon and Washington outreach process that I've been working on and in the Q&A. And I see we actually have one already from Heidi. But I'll also ask that you share some of your ideas about some outreach gaps that you might have seen in this presentation. Where do you think folks who use firewood are looking for information? Are there places where firewood producers are interacting in Oregon and Washington? And I'd suggest that you put those kinds of suggestions in the chat because the webinar format is a little interesting. Um, Heidi's question about if I've had success with state park campground registrations. That one is a little bit of a back and forth right now. We're working with both Oregon and Washington to develop that through some specific messaging, but it's going to take some time. They have a lot of different campsites and a lot of different layers to their organizations. So we're working hard on getting those relationships built up, but it's taking time. And have I been meeting with people in person at the sites you're targeting? Yeah, we've been having some in-person meetings. Uh, Most recently, I went to the Western Plant Board meeting up in Bellingham, and that was a really great opportunity to meet with a lot of different Department of Agriculture folks to really get a handle on some of the messaging that they are using to help this happen. Mostly, this has been Zoom meetings just because that's what's convenient. But I am looking into some good opportunities in the future to meet with a number of organizations at the same time.
I just want to add to that too. That's actually been an important component of this position that Alex has because from the national standpoint, it's just, and I see a lot of familiar names here. It's just Lee Greenwood and I, and Lee's in Montana and I'm in Pennsylvania. And so we were really looking for someone who already lived in the Pacific Northwest, who could, take that opportunity to visit people in person if that was the, most effective means of communicating. And so Alex has really taken to that and has already signed himself up for some more in-person stuff. And it's just great to have him in that place so that he can take advantage of those opportunities when that is the most effective way to get something going. So.
Yeah. Uh, some of our TNC Washington colleagues have recommended some folks that we should check in with as uh, here in Washington, and I'm planning on meeting with those folks tomorrow, which will be really exciting. So, yeah, we are doing some in-person work as well. Any
Also,
other? Go
so
ahead.
I was just gonna say also if anyone here, because again I see some familiar names and I see a lot of people who work for agency. If anyone else has any success stories or stuff, prop challenges that you ran into that you want to share with us, I think a lot of people in the audience could get something from that, and we could also get something from that for this project specifically. So it doesn't have to just be a question.
A provincial organization in Alberta, Stop Dutch Elm Disease, has coordinated with parks for firewood disposal bins. Is this something that occurs in Oregon and Washington? Yeah, so I just came from another meeting where they're sharing about some firewood disposal bins that are going into place in the Willamette Valley. So this is still something that is being developed. It is not something that is present just yet, but it is something that is happening and being developed right now. Um, yeah, I'll be excited to see how all of that shakes out too. Have I experienced any pushback or challenges, and how have I dealt with that? You know, it's inevitable. Some folks are going to be not super interested, and we are tracking our failures as well as our successes. So one of the things that's pretty common is just a mission misalignment. Sometimes when I'm reaching out to folks, it looks to me like they might have some information about, firewood or camping. But then when I, get in touch with them, they say something like, "Oh, we actually don't allow firewood on our sites at all." And then that's great. That's, kind of what we're looking for. Other times it's we don't have capacity to change anything. And my goal is to make it as easy as possible for them, but sometimes that's just it. They just don't have capacity. So in our work, most people have been really, really uh, kind and interested and engaged with this work. Um, but frequently it's just a capacity issue. And that's, something that we all struggle with. We haven't experienced anybody who's like, you know, completely opposed to this work in my field or in my area, at least. Laurel might have some stories, but we can talk about Oregon and Washington today. My dad tried to bring home fat wood because he believed no pest could live in it. Do you encounter other myths like that? I haven't heard of that one before. That's really interesting. I'm going to have to look that one up later. Um, the most common misunderstanding that I've seen is that kiln-dried firewood is sufficient for killing pests, and that just isn't the case. Um, in the particular case of EAB, there's an almost 5-year growth period, I think. I'm not a biologist and I'm relatively new to this work, so please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about that. But stuff like kiln drying and just leaving it in place typically isn't sufficient to really completely get rid of wood borers. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I that's exactly what I was thinking, Alex. That's a big one that we see again, not only among the public, but among, forest health professionals even. People think that kiln dried and certified heat treated is synonymous, and they are absolutely not, both in the practical sense and also the very legal sense. So for anyone who on this call who may not be aware, certified heat treated firewood is certified by a governing authority, so either the federal government or a state government usually, and it has a label, and it's usually to be in compliance with some sort of regulation. And so that is much different than just kiln dried. Although kiln dried sometimes might be safe, but there's no authority to have confirmed that it was heated long enough, hot enough to completely prevent any live bugs inside. So that is a difference there. And even among certified heat treated firewood, there's different standards and different regulations have different standards. So again, it just becomes very messy very quickly. But yeah, that is a big one that I've seen. I've also never heard of fat wood, so I'm gonna have to look into that and learn more about it. See if Lee's ever heard of that. That's interesting. I have had experience with people thinking that. Or people just holding very like dearly to the fact that it's their firewood. Getting your own firewood, cutting your own firewood, it can be a very labor intensive process and people can be very attached to that. And so understanding that when you're, dealing with the public, and being careful in that cultural sense, I guess, is an important element because yeah, you don't ever want people to think that A, like you're trying to control them having firewood or fun around a campfire to begin with, or B, that you're trying to kind of overstep or impede on their freedoms to have their own firewood, so it's really just the educational element and the bringing it home as in like, that they have the power to kind of protect forest health and here's the best ways to do that. So
Uh, Georgiana says at the city of Saskatoon, I put up EAB traps on boulevard trees throughout the city. As we rotate traps to new sites, I've started to leave an EAB pamphlet with Don't Move Firewood messaging on it at the home that has the tree with the trap in it. We started getting questions about the traps in the trees. That's really great to hear. I live in a spongy moth treatment area, and that happened to me as well over the last years that the Washington State Department of Agriculture reached out with mailers, and it was really great to see that level of engagement from a state agency. Um, Somebody asks, what kind of psychological responses are you seeing from the public in the Pacific Northwest? There's been a lot of sadness in the Northeast, and it is not something I've seen much research on. Uh, I don't know if there has been a whole lot of research on it. Laurel might be able to speak a little bit more authoritatively about that, but I'm seeing shock. A lot of folks are just really surprised that this is a thing. When I talked to people in the Pacific Northwest, they had no idea that there was such big threats out there, especially with firewood. Um, Coming from living in the Pacific Northwest, I didn't know a whole lot about this before. And, hearing Laurel describe just before this meeting about a stand of trees in her backyard that is just dead and dying and about to fall over is shocking for folks around here. I don't know if anybody's done any psychological studies on that, but that's, excuse me, that's been the response that I've gotten most is just shock and surprise, which is really powerful for outreach work. People hear that and they want to make change, and that's really powerful.
yeah, that's a really great question. Because it kind of gets to why context is so important and how messaging can kind of be tailored to the audience and the geo region where you are. And for the folks in the Pacific Northwest, this is new to a lot of people. Like we weren't surprised at all that Alex hadn't heard about this before because they're not in the Midwest, right? Or the East where we've seen emerald ash borers for decades. It's new to them, which is a big reason why this project is, happening to begin with, why it's so important. So,
Uh, Julia asks, the Don't Move Firewood campaign has many different sayings. Don't move firewood, buy where you burn it, buy local, burn local. Do we find that any of these messages are more effective than others when talking to people? Is it best to stick to only one message when reaching out? You know, in terms of messaging, my training says to keep it simple. And all of those are pretty simple. Like Laurel said, there's some nuance there about who you're talking to. If it's somebody who, relies on split firewood for heat, that's a whole other conversation than somebody who's going glamping in their RV. As for which is more effective than others, that we've done some research on that. Um, but Laura, please correct me if I'm wrong in saying this. The results were a little bit middling.
Yeah, so I don't know that we've done research on the like buy local, burn local versus buy it where you burn it, like specifically. But as I mentioned, like we do, first of all, buy local, burn local is more of a Canadian thing. We tend to stick with the buy it where you burn it. It doesn't matter. If someone's using buy local, burn local, we're not going to tell them to change it. Just because they're in the United States. Like it's the same sentiment. I have seen anecdotally pushback from specifically the buy it where you burn it one, with people thinking that a big firewood is a industry that we're trying to push or something. Just the fact that we're saying buy, and then I've also seen support from other folks, like mom and pop firewood stands who love that because like that's, they live near a state park or a state forest or a national forest, and it is the safest thing to buy local, and like even the agencies themselves will be like, please find a local vendor, near the park, or that might even be the rule in some places. I think Wisconsin has a rule that has to be within 10 miles. So again, we just think about the context, whose website is it on, or whose poster is it on, where is it at, what do we get a sense from the needs from that area. So, but it like Don't Move Firewood is always coupled with something, some responsible alternative, so that we're not just focusing on the don't, because people don't want to be told what to do. They don't, no one wants their, like to feel like their autonomy is being taken away. So, empowerment is what we're going for. Here's how you can help protect the places you love. I saw Tegan is our next question or comment. So Play Clean Go's theme this year is, we protect the places we love. We say protect the places you love all the time. So really kind of bringing it home to people, that empowerment self sense, and then the ways that they can help. Um, so that kind of angle, but yeah.
Yeah, like Laurel said, the next question is from Tegan, who says, we received a question recently from somebody regarding transporting firewood in state parks. I'm curious how you might respond to this. If there are ecological slash economical invasive impacts for people bringing in their own firewood to state parks while camping, then why do they charge for firewood at the parks? A lot of people go camping because it's low cost recreation. They probably don't want to have to pay for firewood if they have some at home. Yeah, I mean that's get into the root of it there is that it's a it is a privilege to buy firewood. Um, but I think it's a tricky question, and I think imploring and reinforcing how important this work is to the future of firewood. And again, the messaging that we go with is 50 miles is too far, and 10 or less is best. So there's enough nuance there. I think that folks can, find a local firewood producer that is maybe not quite as expensive as the in park one.
Yeah, I think I mean, that is a tough one because ultimately they have a great point, and it's true that the money spent on prevention is so much less than the money spent on management. However, it's still money being spent. And I don't work for a state park. I don't know their budgetary constraints, but I'm sure they're there. And I don't know how they decide how they make those choices. But I've seen it where firewood is just, like if you can find it on the ground, pick it up on the ground. Like the ultimate goal is like, please just like protect these forests. It's not to make money. Firewood already is there's such a thin margin as far as I understand in the firewood markets. There's so much that goes into firewood, that like people nobody's like really getting, like, these state parks aren't getting rich off firewood. I just think that they probably can't take the hit for giving away firewood for free. That's my guess. So yeah, that's a tricky one, and we get questions that are kind of tricky all the time. And again, it all comes down to like context, and it's different in one place than another, and can be a lot. So.
Emily asks, EAB hasn't hit Montana yet, but it could be introduced to our green ash population from firewood moved from North Dakota. Do you have any advice for approaching outreach from a preventative mindset? Um, I would say look at Oregon. They have done a really good job of preparing for EAB from an administrative standpoint. And I think, from a messaging standpoint, being really clear about the potential devastating effects has been really effective for our work. Um, being really honest and straightforward is really effective when something so scary is coming in.
Yeah, this is again another framing of, protect Montana from this, protect, this isn't here yet. Here's our, opportunity to make people aware and, don't bring this pest into this state. Here's what you can do, that sort of thing. So it's just kind of like changing the language a little bit, to put the emphasis on prevention. Um, I feel like I saw some good examples of this recently, but it's leaving me right now. I think there's somebody here from Arizona. They're doing a really great job with a lot of this like preventative outreach because it's not in Arizona yet. But, a lot of these places and a lot of the mindset is it's kind of only a matter of time. So it's not about preventing, the potential inevitable, but it's about slowing and giving management time to prepare and to biodiversify cities and to gain the resources and the experience and the plans and put all of that together so that if and when it does come, like Oregon, they can jump right to it and into handling it. And also give the research a chance, like the talk yesterday from Carrie Pike. Like, there's a lot of really amazing research going into lingering ash and breeding ash resistance, and so but all of those things take time. It takes decades to kind of do genetic stuff in trees. So but that's the goal here. The goal isn't a lot of people want to just throw their hands up, especially with EAB, and in the places, again, anecdotally we see a lot of like, who cares? Move it around. Like EAB has killed all the trees, like whatever. Like, it's a lost cause now, and like, there can be the sentiment of like whatever, move it around. And I've seen literally those comments on our social media posts before, and I almost wanted to frame the one, yeah, who cares? Move it around. Like, my whole job is like just thrown away in that one comment. But that's again the importance in not just hyper focusing on one pest either, because it may be a lost cause in one county or something like that. But if people have the mindset of like, whatever, it's over, EAB's everywhere, then they're not thinking of spotted lanternfly. They're not thinking of Asian longhorn beetle. They're not thinking about the pests that we don't even know about yet. So yeah, getting hyper focused on any one pest is not good.
Melissa shares that a barbecue business is bringing firewood from Texas for smoking, and that could be a group that could benefit from outreach. Absolutely. Um, yeah, and if they're bringing firewood in bulk, they might be a target for those fines, so we could definitely add them to the list to do some outreach. Um, Melissa, my email is on the bottom. If you happen to be willing to share who that group is, I'd love to reach out to them. Um, Let's see. And Maine has signs on most roads into the state with signs that say out of state firewood is banned, including on Interstate 95. Yeah, that has been a bit of a surprise for me to learn about, coming from as a Pacific Northwesterner, is that other states have those bans and that they're so well known on the east side of the country and so unknown over here. Um, yeah, that's been really fascinating to see. I think with an infinite budget, we would love to put up some signs of our own, but uh,
Yeah,
well,
big
that's the
billboards and
reality.
everything. Big billboards are great. They're expensive. It's really hard for a lot of places to do that. But yeah, that's a great strategy. Another thing, like we really try to hammer online outreach so much because a lot of times when people think about this sort of outreach, they think about signage like at the state parks or at the campgrounds themselves. And we always encourage that. And if people want those sort of help with those sort of graphics or whatever, we go for it. But we also then dive into what do you have online? What do you have a confirmation email in your campground reservations that say like, the situation or the best practices that you want folks to do? Because once they show up to the park, they might see that, and that is a trusted source. We've seen that in our research that people would see that signage and um, consider it a trusted source. However, it's too late if they already brought firewood. So then it's, that sort of physical outreach at the location needs to have follow up with what do you do with your firewood if you already brought it from elsewhere? And is it in a location where it's safe to burn it all as fast as you can, or is that going to be a fire risk? You know, are there, is there some sort of program in place where they will confiscate it and then or trade you? We've seen it all different strategies for that. So that's again just something folks have to keep in mind. So yeah, really really hammering all the outreach you can to reach people again who are not looking for it, who probably don't know about this, and are just trying to figure out if they can bring their dog or if there's a playground at the campground. Like these are all the places that firewood information has to be, even if that might seem a little weird to some folks because that's the way people are going to find it. So,
It's tricky. Every approach is a little bit different. Um, I will, I guess, wrap us up unless there's any other questions or thoughts or out on any outreach gaps. We do want to extend our thanks to USDA APHIS and the U.S. Forest Service for their continued financial support of this important work. And I wanted to personally thank you all for attending this webinar. I hope you have a good rest of your afternoon. And my email is on screen right now. If you want to take a screenshot and shoot me a message, my email is always open, and I'm happy to take some time and chat with you. I saw some great familiar names in the chat, and I'm excited to hear from you and get this outreach underway in Washington and Oregon. All
all
right.
right, sounds great. Thanks, everybody.